To our amazing viewers at Infidelity Tales Lab, welcome and thank you. Your presence makes these stories worth sharing. We'd love to hear, which part of the world are you joining us from? Let us know. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Opportunity. Maxwell Porter hunched over his laptop at the kitchen table, his coffee long gone cold. The email from Helix Dynamics had arrived 3 hours ago, and he still couldn't believe it. After 15 years of grinding away at mid-level engineering positions, watching younger colleagues leapfrog past him into management, Maxwell finally had a shot. Regional Operations Director, he whispered, scrolling through the details again. The salary was nearly triple what he made now. A company car, comprehensive benefits, relocation assistance to Denver. The front door opened, and Vanessa strode in wearing designer workout gear that had never seen a drop of sweat. Her honey blonde hair was perfectly styled, not a strand out of place. She dropped her purse on the counter and frowned at Maxwell. Still on that computer? I thought you were going to fix the garage door today. Maxwell looked up, unable to contain his excitement. I got it, Ness. The Helix job. They want you to come in tomorrow for the final interview. Vanessa's eyes widened. Helix Dynamics? The one in Denver. She crossed the kitchen and peered over his shoulder at the screen. Max, that's incredible. For a moment, Maxwell saw a flicker of the woman he'd fallen in love with 20 years ago. They met in college. She was studying business administration. He was in engineering. Back then, they dreamed of building a life together, maybe starting their own company someday. But somewhere along the way, Vanessa's ambitions had shifted from career success to social climbing, and their partnership had slowly corroded. Does this mean we'd have to move? She asked, her enthusiastic tone faltering. Yes, but they're offering relocation assistance. Think about it, Ness. A fresh start for us, for the family. Their 16-year-old daughter, Zoe, trudged into the kitchen, headphones clamped over her ears. She made a beeline for the refrigerator, ignoring both parents. Zoe, Maxwell said loudly. I have some news. Zoe rolled her eyes and removed one earbud. What? I've been offered a final interview for a director position at Helix Dynamics. Zoe shrugged. Cool, I guess. She grabbed a yogurt and retreated back upstairs. Maxwell sighed. He and Zoe had been close when she was younger, but the past few years had driven a wedge between them. Lately, she seemed to mirror her mother's dismissive attitude toward him. Don't take it personally, Vanessa said, checking her reflection in the microwave door. She's a teenager. Everything's dramatic at that age. Yeah. Maxwell closed his laptop. I need to prepare for tomorrow. This could change everything for us. Vanessa smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I'm sure you'll do great, honey. As she headed upstairs, Maxwell missed the text message lighting up her phone. He got the interview. We need to talk. Now. The next morning, Maxwell adjusted his tie in the bedroom mirror. His reflection showed a man in his early 40s with dark hair graying at the temples, serious brown eyes behind horn-rimmed glasses, and the hint of stress lines around his mouth. But today there was something else there. Hope. Vanessa appeared behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist. You look handsome, she murmured, resting her chin on his shoulder. Maxwell tensed slightly. This affection felt foreign after months of polite distance between them. Thanks. I'm nervous. Don't be. You've earned this. She straightened his already straight tie. What time will you be home? Late afternoon, probably. The interview's at 11, then they're taking me to lunch. Vanessa nodded. I'll have dinner ready. Something special to celebrate. Maxwell kissed her cheek, surprised but pleased by her support. Maybe this was what they needed, a shared goal, a fresh start. As he headed downstairs, he spotted Zoe sitting at the kitchen counter, scrolling through her phone. Surprisingly, she wasn't wearing headphones. Good luck, Dad, she said without looking up. Hope you get it. Maxwell smiled. Thanks, kiddo. See you tonight. The drive to Helix Dynamics regional office took 40 minutes. Maxwell rehearsed answers to potential questions, breathing deeply to calm his nerves. This wasn't just a job. It was redemption, a chance to prove himself after years of being overlooked. The interview went better than he could have hoped. The hiring manager, Diane Forrester, was impressed with his technical knowledge and leadership philosophy. They discussed his vision for streamlining operations, his experience with cross-functional team management, and his ideas for improving vendor relationships. "I have to say, Maxwell," Diane said as they wrapped up lunch, "you're exactly what we're looking for. I just need to run things by the executive team, but I expect we'll have an offer for you by the end of the week." Maxwell could hardly contain his elation on the drive home. He called Vanessa, but she didn't pick up. He left a voicemail instead, sharing the good news. He walked through the front door just after 4, expecting to find Vanessa preparing the celebration dinner she'd promised. Instead, the house was quiet. "Ness?" "Zoe," he called out. He found Zoe in the living room, sprawled on the couch with her laptop. "Where's your mom?" he asked. Zoe shrugged. She had to run errands. Said she'll be back soon. She glanced up. "How'd the interview go?" "Great. Really great." Maxwell loosened his tie. "They're going to make an offer." Something flickered across Zoe's face. Concern? Fear? She quickly looked back at her screen. "That's good, I guess." Maxwell frowned. "You guess?" "Zoe, this is a huge opportunity for our family." "Yeah, but Denver? All my friends are here. My school. Everything." She slammed her laptop shut. "But whatever. It's not like my opinion matters." Before Maxwell could respond, she stormed upstairs, leaving him standing alone in the living room, his victory suddenly tasting bitter. Chapter 2. Shadows of Doubt. 3 days later, Maxwell still hadn't received the promised offer from Helix Dynamics. Each time he checked his email or phone, anxiety gnawed at him. Had he misread Diane's enthusiasm? Had another candidate edged him out? "Maybe you should call them," Vanessa suggested over breakfast, barely looking up from her phone. She'd been unusually attentive since his interview, asking detailed questions about the company and the position. "I don't want to seem desperate," Maxwell replied, pushing his eggs around his plate. Diane said by the end of the week. "That's today." "Well, sitting here stressing won't help." Vanessa stood and rinsed her coffee cup. "I'm meeting Audrey for brunch. Try to get out of the house. Clear your head." Maxwell nodded absently. He planned to work on his resume, just in case. Have fun. After Vanessa left, Maxwell retreated to his home office, a converted corner of the basement with a desk and a bookshelf. He was updating his LinkedIn profile when his phone rang. The caller ID showed Helix Dynamics. His heart pounded as he answered. Maxwell Porter speaking. "Maxwell, this is Diane Forrester." Her voice sounded strained. "Do you have a moment to talk?" "Of course," Maxwell said, his mouth going dry. "I'm not sure how to say this, but we've decided to go in another direction with the regional director position." Maxwell felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. "I see. May I ask why?" "I thought the interview went well." There was a long pause. "It did. Extremely well. But we received a call yesterday that raised some concerns." "A call? From whom?" Another pause. "From your wife?" "Actually." The room seemed to tilt. "My wife?" "Yes. She called and declined the position on your behalf. She said you'd reconsidered due to family obligations." Maxwell gripped the phone so hard his knuckles turned white. I didn't." When we expressed surprise, she recommended another candidate. "Someone named Preston Holbrook?" She said he was a family friend with extensive qualifications. The name hit Maxwell like a freight train. Preston Holbrook, Vanessa's college boyfriend, the one she occasionally mentioned with a distant look in her eyes, the successful investment banker who'd chosen his career over her. "There's been a misunderstanding," Maxwell said, struggling to keep his voice steady. "I never authorized my wife to speak on my behalf, and I certainly didn't decline the position." "I suspected something wasn't right," Diane said softly. "That's why I'm calling directly. But I'm afraid it's too late. We've already extended an offer to Mr. Holbrook, and he's accepted." Maxwell closed his eyes, trying to process the betrayal. "I understand. Thank you for telling me." After hanging up, he sat motionless, his mind racing. Why would Vanessa sabotage his career opportunity? And why recommend Preston, of all people? He was still sitting there, stunned, when he heard the garage door open. Footsteps overhead. Laughter. Not just Vanessa's voice, but a man's too, deep and confident. Maxwell crept upstairs and paused in the kitchen doorway. Vanessa was unpacking groceries, while a tall, athletic man with salt and pepper hair leaned against the counter, holding a glass of wine. Even after 2 decades, Maxwell recognized Preston Holbrook immediately. "I still can't believe you pulled it off," Preston was saying. "The look on Diane's face when you called was priceless." Vanessa laughed. "It wasn't hard. Max tells me everything about his work. I knew exactly what to say to make it convincing. And now I get to sweep in and be the hero." Preston sipped his wine. "Regional director. Not bad for a guy who was considering a career change anyway." "Denver's perfect," Vanessa said. "Close enough to visit easily. Far enough that Max won't accidentally run into you." Preston set down his glass and pulled Vanessa into his arms. "How long before you break the news that you're leaving him?" "A month, maybe 2. I need to get Zoe on board first. She's already warming up to the idea of moving in with you." "Actually," Maxwell said, stepping into the kitchen, "I think you should explain right now." Vanessa jerked away from Preston, her face draining of color. "Max, you're supposed to be what?" "Looking for another job because my wife sabotaged my career opportunity." His voice was deadly calm, but inside, something was breaking. "Or maybe I'm supposed to be oblivious to the fact that my wife and daughter are planning to leave me for her ex-boyfriend?" Preston straightened to his full height, a good 3 inches taller than Maxwell. "Now, Porter, let's be reasonable. Get out of my house," Maxwell said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Preston glanced at Vanessa, who nodded slightly. He grabbed his jacket. "Call me later," he murmured to her, before brushing past Maxwell. Once the front door closed, Vanessa's shock transformed into defiance. "You weren't supposed to find out this way." "How was I supposed to find out? After you'd already moved to Denver with my daughter and the man you recommended for the job that should have been mine?" "It wouldn't have worked out anyway," Vanessa said dismissively. "You're not director material, Max. You never have been. You're too passive, too content with mediocrity." Each word cut deeper than the last. "And Preston is everything I'm not. Is that it? He has ambition, drive. He doesn't just talk about dreams. He makes them happen." Vanessa crossed her arms. "We reconnected at my college reunion last year. He's divorced now, and he wanted to rekindle what we had. So the past year of distance between us, the cold shoulders, the criticism, that was all leading up to this. I was going to tell you after you'd processed losing the job. Make it seem like the natural end to a marriage that's been failing for years." She sighed. "Zoe needs a stronger role model. Max, someone who can set her up for success, not us." She gestured vaguely at their modest home. The mention of Zoe reignited Maxwell's anger. "Does our daughter know about this scheme? The call to Helix?" Vanessa hesitated. "She knows Preston and I are together. She knows we're planning a future that includes her." As if on cue, Zoe walked through the front door, freezing when she saw the tension between her parents. "What's going on?" she asked, dropping her backpack. "Your mother was just explaining how she and Preston Holbrook have been planning to destroy my career and our marriage," Maxwell said coldly. Zoe's eyes darted to Vanessa. "You told him? I thought we agreed to wait." The confirmation of his daughter's involvement felt like a knife to Maxwell's heart. "So you did know? Dad, it's not what you think." "Really? Because it looks like my wife and daughter have been plotting behind my back to replace me with a more successful model." Zoe lifted her chin defiantly, suddenly looking so much like her mother. "Well, you're better off as a housekeeper anyway. That's basically what you've been for years while Mom supported us." Maxwell recoiled as if she'd slapped him. It was true that Vanessa's real estate business had out-earned his engineering salary for the past few years, but he'd never thought his own daughter saw him as nothing more than domestic help. Before he could respond, Vanessa's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and frowned before answering. "Preston? What's wrong?" Even from across the room, Maxwell could hear the furious voice on the other end. Vanessa's face paled as she listened. "That's impossible," she said. "How could they rescind the offer already?" Maxwell watched as his wife's carefully constructed plan began to unravel before his eyes. And deep within him, something cold and calculating stirred to life. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Chapter 3, The Awakening. Maxwell lay awake in the guest bedroom, staring at the ceiling. It had been 3 days since his world imploded. 3 days of icy silence between him and Vanessa. 3 days of Zoe avoiding his gaze. 3 days of plotting, Preston's job offer had indeed been rescinded. Apparently, Diane Forrester had done some additional checking after a call with Maxwell and discovered that Preston had exaggerated his qualifications. The irony might have been satisfying if Maxwell's own career prospects hadn't been collateral damage. His phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number. Mr. Porter, this is Diane Forrester. I've been doing some thinking. Can we meet tomorrow? Privately. Maxwell sat up, pulse quickening. He typed back, yes. Name a time and place. She suggested a coffee shop halfway between his home and the Helix office. 10 a.m. Sleep eluded him as his mind raced with possibilities. Was Diane going to offer him the position after all? Or perhaps warn him about something else Vanessa and Preston were planning? The next morning, he told Vanessa he was meeting with a headhunter. She barely acknowledged him, still reeling from the collapse of her carefully orchestrated plan. Without Preston's job at Helix, their future together had hit a significant roadblock. Diane was already at the coffee shop when Maxwell arrived, 2 steaming mugs on the table before her. "Thank you for meeting me," she said as he slid into the booth across from her. "I appreciate you reaching out." Maxwell wrapped his hands around the mug. "I assume this is about the regional director position?" Diane's expression turned apologetic. "Yes and no. The position has been filled, but not by Preston Holbrook. After our conversation and some additional vetting, I realized neither of you were right for the role." Maxwell's hope deflated. "I see. However," Diane continued, "something about your situation has been bothering me. The way your wife interfered, it was deeply unprofessional and, frankly, disturbing." "You're not the only one disturbed by it," Maxwell said bitterly. "I did some digging into Preston Holbrook." Diane pulled out a folder. "What I found raises serious questions about his business ethics. Questionable investment practices, manipulated client accounts, a trail of regulatory warnings that never quite reached the level of criminal charges." Maxwell frowned. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I think you deserve to know who your wife was planning to leave you for." She pushed the folder across the table. "And because I think you might be exactly what Helix needs, just not in Denver." Maxwell's eyes snapped up from the folder. "What do you mean?" "We're launching a new division here in Seattle. Advanced Engineering Solutions for Sustainable Urban Development. We need someone with your technical background and leadership potential to head it up. It's not operations, but the compensation is comparable, and you wouldn't have to relocate." "You're offering me a job? After everything that's happened?" Diane smiled. "I'm good at reading people, Maxwell. What your wife did speaks volumes about her, not you. The position is yours if you want it." Maxwell felt the weight lifting from his shoulders. "When would I start?" 2 weeks. Though given your home situation, I'd understand if you needed time to sort things out." "No," Maxwell said firmly. 2 weeks is perfect." He glanced at the folder. "May I keep this?" "It's yours. Do with it what you will." Diane stood and extended her hand. "Welcome to Helix Dynamics, Maxwell." As they shook hands, Maxwell felt something shift inside him. The passive, accommodating man he'd been was gone. In his place stood someone colder, more calculating. Someone who wouldn't rest until those who had betrayed him paid the price. Back in his car, he opened the folder and began to read. Preston Holbrook's history of ethical lapses was extensive, though carefully concealed beneath a veneer of success and charm. But it wasn't the investment improprieties that caught Maxwell's attention. It was a small note about Preston's personal life. Subject has pattern of relationships with married women in vulnerable positions. Current suspected paramour, Vanessa Porter, married to potential Helix employee Maxwell Porter. Previous, Audrey Whitman, now divorced. Audrey Whitman, Vanessa's best friend. The one she'd been meeting for brunch regularly for the past year. Maxwell pulled out his phone and searched for Audrey on social media. Her profile showed a bitter divorce had finalized 8 months ago. Around the same time Vanessa had attended her college reunion and reconnected with Preston. The pieces were falling into place. Preston's pattern, Audrey's divorce, Vanessa's betrayal, and somewhere in all of this, his daughter had been turned against him. Maxwell started the car, a plan crystallizing in his mind. He'd take the job at Helix. He'd gather evidence of Preston's unethical business practices. He'd uncover every secret, every lie, every manipulation. And then, when the time was right, he'd use it all to dismantle the lies of those who had tried to destroy his. As he drove home, his phone buzzed with a text from Zoe. "Where are you? Mom's freaking out." He ignored it. Let them worry. Let them wonder. The game had changed, and Maxwell Porter was no longer playing by their rules. Chapter 4. Calculated Moves. 2 weeks into his new position at Helix Dynamics, Maxwell settled into his corner office with a view of Elliott Bay. The division he now headed, Sustainable Urban Engineering Solutions, was Helix's fastest-growing sector, with projects across the Pacific Northwest and potential contracts in California and British Columbia. At home, an uneasy truce had formed. Vanessa had attempted to explain away her betrayal as a momentary lapse in judgment when Maxwell revealed his new job. She'd claimed that she and Preston had realized they'd made a mistake, that she wanted to work on their marriage. Maxwell had nodded, smiled, and pretended to consider it while secretly moving forward with his plans. Step 1 was already complete: financial independence. His new salary was double what he'd made before, and the signing bonus had allowed him to open a separate bank account that Vanessa knew nothing about. Step 2 was in progress: gathering intelligence. He'd hired a private investigator named Ryan Mercer, a former military intelligence officer with a reputation for discretion and thoroughness. "Tell me about your wife's daily routine," Ryan said during their first meeting in Maxwell's office after hours. Maxwell slid a detailed schedule across the desk. "She leaves the house at 9 a.m. most days, supposedly for her real estate office. But she only has showings or client meetings 3 days a week, according to her online calendar." Ryan studied the schedule. "And you want to know where she goes during the unaccounted hours?" "Yes. And I want documentation of her meetings with Preston Holbrook." Maxwell handed over a photograph of Preston. "I need evidence that their relationship is ongoing." "What about your daughter?" Ryan asked. "You mentioned she's involved somehow." Maxwell's jaw tightened. "Zoe has been influenced by her mother. I need to know if she's meeting with Preston too, and what they're telling her about me." Ryan nodded, making notes. "And this Preston character, you want background on him beyond what's in the Helix folder?" "Everything. Financial history, business dealings, personal relationships. Especially any evidence of unethical behavior that could be reported to regulatory authorities." "What's your endgame here, Maxwell?" Ryan's expression was professionally neutral. "Are you building a case for divorce? Custody? Revenge?" Maxwell met his gaze steadily. "All of the above." After Ryan left, Maxwell turned to his computer and pulled up a secure email account he'd created specifically for his revenge project. In it were folders labeled Vanessa, Preston, Zoe, and Financial Strategy. Each contained meticulously organized information, schedule details, account numbers, copies of text messages he'd managed to extract from the family cloud account. He clicked on a new email from Ryan, sent just hours after their meeting. Attached was a preliminary report on Preston Holbrook's movements. The investment banker had been spotted meeting Vanessa at an upscale hotel downtown, staying for 3 hours in the middle of a workday. Maxwell saved the photos to his Vanessa folder. Not enough for a confrontation yet, but a promising start. His phone buzzed with a text from Zoe. "Coming home for dinner?" The casual message, as if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't betrayed him alongside her mother, made his blood boil. But he forced himself to respond neutrally, "Working late." "Don't wait up." In reality, he had other plans for the evening. He'd arranged to meet Audrey Whitman, Vanessa's recently divorced friend, at a quiet bar near her apartment. Audrey was already on her second martini when Maxwell arrived. She looked surprised to see him, though she'd agreed to the meeting readily enough when he'd called claiming he wanted her advice about his marriage. "Maxwell," she said, her speech slightly slurred. "I wasn't sure you'd show." "Thanks for meeting me," he said, sliding into the booth. "I know it's a bit unusual." Audrey studied him through narrowed eyes. "Vanessa doesn't know you're here, does she?" "No, and I'd prefer to keep it that way." He ordered a scotch from a passing server. "I wanted to talk to you because I think we might have something in common." "What's that?" Audrey's guard was up, but curiosity flickered in her eyes. "Preston Holbrook." The color drained from Audrey's face. She took a large gulp of her martini. What about him? I know he was involved with you before your divorce. I know he's involved with Vanessa now, and I suspect he follows a pattern. Audrey stared at her empty glass. Why are you here, Maxwell? To gloat? To tell me I got what I deserved for sleeping with a man like Preston? No. Maxwell leaned forward. I'm here because I want to understand how he operates. How he manipulated you. How he's manipulating my wife, and by extension, my daughter. The server brought Maxwell scotch and another martini for Audrey. After she left, Audrey sighed deeply. It started at a charity gala. My husband Douglas was there, but he spent the whole night networking, ignoring me as usual. Preston was charming, attentive. He made me feel seen. She twisted her cocktail napkin. The affair started a week later. And then, Preston convinced me that Douglas was holding me back, that I deserved better, that we could build an amazing life together once I left my marriage. Her laugh was bitter. Sound familiar? Very. Maxwell said, What happened after your divorce? Preston was supportive at first. Then he started finding excuses to cancel plans. Then I found out about, she stopped abruptly. About Vanessa? Audrey nodded miserably. He claimed they'd reconnected innocently at her college reunion, but I found messages going back months before that. She looked up at Maxwell, her eyes red-rimmed. I tried to warn her, but she wouldn't listen. Said their situation was different. Said they had a special connection that I wouldn't understand. And now you're alone. While Preston moves on to his next target, Maxwell observed. Story of my life. Audrey downed half her fresh martini. Douglas took everything in the divorce. The house, most of our savings. All I got was this crappy apartment and alimony that barely covers the rent. Maxwell saw an opportunity. What if you could get some of that back? What if Preston faced consequences for his actions? Audrey's eyes narrowed. What are you suggesting? I'm gathering information on Preston. His business practices, his pattern with women like you and Vanessa. I could use someone on the inside, someone who still has access to certain circles. You want me to spy for you? Audrey seemed more intrigued than offended. I want us to help each other. Maxwell slid a business card across the table. Think about it. If you decide to join me, call this number. It's a secure line. Back in his car, Maxwell added notes to his phone about his meeting with Audrey. Another piece in place. If she agreed to help, she could provide access to social circles where Preston operated, potentially uncovering more victims of his predatory pattern. His phone buzzed again. Vanessa, where are you? It's after 9. He typed back. Client meeting ran long. Home in 30. The lie came easily now, just like they had for her. When he arrived home, the house was quiet except for the sound of the TV in the living room. Vanessa was curled up on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She looked up when he entered. Productive day? She asked, her tone carefully neutral. Very. Maxwell hung his coat in the closet. New project is taking off faster than expected. That's great. Vanessa hesitated. Zoe was hoping to talk to you about college applications. She's considering engineering programs. Maxwell hid his surprise. Zoe had never expressed interest in engineering before. Is that so? She admires your new position. I think she's reconsidering her options. A test, then, to see if he still cared about Zoe's future. To see if he could be manipulated through his love for his daughter. I'll talk to her this weekend, Maxwell said, keeping his tone casual. Though if she's serious about engineering, she should start with Stanford. Best program on the West Coast. Vanessa smiled, seemingly satisfied that he'd passed her test. That's what I told her. She's worried about her math grades, though. I could help her with that. Another piece of the puzzle. Keep Zoe close. Understand what Vanessa and Preston had been telling her. Potentially turn her back to his side, or at least ensure she wasn't a pawn in their game. Later, lying in bed beside his wife, Maxwell stared at the ceiling and calculated his next moves. Audrey was a promising ally. Ryan was gathering valuable intelligence. His position at Helix was secure and growing stronger. But the most crucial piece, the evidence that would destroy Preston Holbrook, was still missing. For that, he needed someone with access to Preston's professional world. Someone who knew where the bodies were buried in the investment banking industry. Tomorrow, he would start looking for that someone. The hunter was becoming more skilled with each passing day. Chapter 5. Hidden Alliances. 6 weeks into his revenge plan, Maxwell had established a new rhythm to his life. By day, he was the innovative director of Helix's sustainable engineering division, growing their client base and impressing executives with his strategic vision. By night, he was a methodical architect of retribution, piecing together the puzzle of Preston Holbrook's vulnerabilities. Ryan Mercer had delivered comprehensive surveillance reports documenting Vanessa's ongoing affair with Preston. They met 3 times a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays at the Fairmont Olympic Hotel, and Sunday afternoons at Preston's downtown penthouse, while Maxwell took Zoe to their newly established father-daughter coding sessions. Those Sunday afternoons with Zoe had become an unexpected complication in Maxwell's emotional landscape. His daughter, sensing a shift in his career success and confidence, had gradually warmed to him again. She was genuinely interested in learning programming, and Maxwell found himself enjoying their time together despite knowing she still met with Preston and Vanessa for family planning dinners twice a month. "Can I ask you something, Dad?" Zoe said one Sunday as they worked through a JavaScript problem together in his home office. "Sure, kiddo. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you'd gotten that job in Denver instead?" Maxwell's fingers paused over the keyboard. "Sometimes." "What?" Zoe shrugged, not meeting his eyes. "I just wonder if things would be better or worse. If we'd be happier. Do you think we're not happy now?" "I don't know. Mom seems stressed lately. You're working all the time, and I keep feeling like there's something nobody's telling me." Maxwell studied his daughter's profile, seeing vulnerability beneath the teenage bravado. How much did she really know about Vanessa and Preston's plans? Had they been honest with her, or was she just another pawn in their game? "Sometimes adults have complicated feelings that are hard to explain," he said carefully. "But I want you to know that whatever happens between me and your mom, we both love you. And my door is always open if you have questions." Zoe nodded, seemingly satisfied with his answer for now. But Maxwell filed away the conversation, another data point in his growing assessment of the situation. The next morning, Maxwell met with his newest ally in his campaign against Preston Holbrook, Margot Winters, a former compliance officer at Preston's investment firm who had been quietly forced out after raising concerns about certain client accounts. Their meeting place was a small cafe near Pike Place Market, crowded enough to provide anonymity, but quiet enough for conversation. "I brought what you asked for," Margot said after they'd exchanged pleasantries. She slid a flash drive across the table. "It's everything I saved before they escorted me out. Transaction records, client complaints, internal emails about creative accounting practices." Maxwell pocketed the drive. "Thank you. This could be extremely valuable. Just remember our deal," Margot said, her eyes hard. "When you take him down, I get public vindication. I want every financial news outlet to know I was right all along." "Absolutely." Maxwell sipped his coffee. "Have you heard anything from your former colleagues about Preston's current activities?" Margot leaned forward. "That's actually why I wanted to meet in person. There's a rumor that Preston's starting his own boutique investment firm, targeting high-net-worth individuals with exclusive investment opportunities. Within the next 2 months. He's quietly recruiting clients from his current firm, including," she hesitated, "including your wife. Word is she's liquidating some real estate holdings to become an early investor." Maxwell felt a cold fury settle in his chest. Vanessa was planning to invest in Preston's new venture? With what money? Their joint savings? The college fund they'd established for Zoe? "Do you know how much she's planning to invest?" Margot shook her head. "But Preston's minimum buy-in is $500,000, and he's promising early investors a 20% return within the first year, which is impossible without cooking the books," Maxwell concluded. "Exactly. It has all the hallmarks of a Ponzi scheme. New investor money paying returns to early investors, while Preston schemes off the top." Maxwell nodded, his mind racing with possibilities. "This changes the timeline. I need to move faster." "What's your plan?" Margot asked. "You'll know when it happens," Maxwell replied. "But I think it's time to involve the Securities and Exchange Commission. Anonymously, of course." Back at his office, Maxwell plugged in Margot's flash drive and began sifting through the files. The evidence of Preston's unethical practices was damning. Manipulated returns, hidden fees, misleading investment prospectuses. But it was one particular folder labeled Holbrook Personal that caught Maxwell's attention. Inside were records of Preston's personal investments, including partnerships in several limited liability companies with ambiguous names. Maxwell cross-referenced these against property records and discovered that one of the LLCs owned the very penthouse where Preston met with Vanessa on Sundays. More interesting was an LLC called Horizon Ventures that had purchased a beachfront property on Whidbey Island 6 months ago, right around the time Preston had reconnected with Vanessa at her college reunion. Maxwell pulled up the property listing. 5 bedrooms, private beach access, panoramic views of Puget Sound. The perfect retreat for a newly formed family. He called Ryan immediately. I need surveillance on a property. He provided the address. I want to know if Vanessa and Preston have visited it together and whether my daughter has been there too. Next, he contacted his financial advisor and, without explaining why, ensured that all joint accounts with Vanessa now required dual authorization for withdrawals over $10,000. He also quietly moved his personal portion of their savings, approximately $300,000, into his private account at a different bank. That evening, Vanessa was waiting for him when he got home, a rare homemade dinner on the table and candles lit. What's the occasion? Maxwell asked, loosening his tie. No occasion. Just thought we could use a nice evening together. Vanessa poured wine into 2 glasses. You've been so busy with the new job. I feel like we hardly see each other anymore. Maxwell accepted the glass, studying his wife's face. She seemed nervous, her smile a little too bright. Where's Zoe? Sleepover at Brianna's house. It's just us tonight. Over dinner, Vanessa kept the conversation light. Neighborhood gossip, a new restaurant she wanted to try, a movie she thought they might enjoy together. But Maxwell could sense her building toward something. Finally, as they were finishing dessert, she reached for his hand across the table. I've been thinking a lot about us lately. About the future. Have you? Maxwell worked to keep his tone neutral. Yes, and I think we need a fresh start. Together. What did you have in mind? Vanessa's eyes lit up. I found a most amazing property on Whidbey Island. Beachfront, incredible views. It would be the perfect weekend getaway for now, and maybe a retirement home down the road. Maxwell felt a surge of cold satisfaction. She was laying the groundwork, trying to get him to help finance the very property Preston had already purchased as their love nest. Sounds expensive, he observed. It is, but with your new position in my real estate business, we could manage it. And I've been researching investment opportunities that could help us afford it even faster. What kind of investment opportunities? Vanessa hesitated for just a moment. A former client is starting a boutique investment firm. Minimum buy-in is high, but the projected returns are impressive. I was thinking we could use part of our savings as an initial investment. How much were you thinking? Maxwell asked, sipping his wine. 500,000? Vanessa watched his face carefully. I know it sounds like a lot, but we have almost 800,000 between our various accounts. And with a 20% return. That's quite ambitious, Maxwell interrupted. Who's the investment manager? A flicker of unease crossed Vanessa's face. His name is Preston Holbrook. He's very well regarded in the industry. Preston Holbrook? Wasn't that the name of your ex-boyfriend? The one you recommended for the Denver job. Vanessa faltered. Yes, that's right. I didn't make the connection immediately. The lie was so blatant that Maxwell almost laughed. Instead, he nodded thoughtfully. I want to meet him before we invest that kind of money. Maybe the 3 of us could have dinner. Of course, Vanessa said quickly, relief evident in her voice. I'll arrange it. Perfect. Maxwell raised his glass in a toast. To new opportunities. Vanessa clinked her glass against his, unaware that she had just walked into the first phase of his trap. Later that night, after Vanessa had fallen asleep, Maxwell sent a series of encrypted messages to Margot, Ryan, and Audrey, outlining the next steps in his plan. The pieces were aligning perfectly. Now it was time to accelerate the endgame. Chapter 6, Counterpoint. The restaurant Vanessa chose for their dinner with Preston was Canlis, Seattle's most prestigious fine dining establishment, with panoramic views of Lake Union and a wine list that ran to dozens of pages. Maxwell arrived 10 minutes early, purposely selecting a moment when Vanessa was in the restroom to approach the table where Preston sat alone. Preston Holbrook, Maxwell said, extending his hand. We finally meet properly. Preston stood, his handshake firm, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. Maxwell, Vanessa's told me so much about you. Funny, she's told me almost nothing about you, Maxwell replied pleasantly, taking a seat. Beyond the fact that you're starting an investment firm and looking for $500,000 of our money. Preston's smile tightened. I understand your caution. It's a significant investment, but I think you'll find the opportunity compelling once I walk you through the prospectus. I look forward to it. Maxwell flagged down a server and ordered a Macallan 18. Tell me, how did you and Vanessa reconnect? After the college reunion, I mean. A flicker of surprise crossed Preston's face. She mentioned that. Of course. We don't keep secrets from each other. Preston recovered quickly. We ran into each other at a charity event a few months after the reunion. Got to talking about old times, career paths. One thing led to another, and now here we are, discussing a business opportunity. Indeed, Maxwell noted Preston's practice deflection. And this business opportunity, is it related to the Whidbey Island property your LLC purchased 6 months ago? Preston's hand froze midway to his water glass. Before he could respond, Vanessa returned to the table, her face lighting up at the sight of the two men together. You've met. Wonderful. She slid into her seat beside Preston, an unconscious tell that Maxwell noted. Have you had a chance to discuss the investment yet? We were just getting to that, Maxwell said smoothly, though I was curious about Preston's other real estate holdings. He was telling me about a beautiful property on Whidbey Island. Vanessa's smile faltered momentarily, her eyes darting to Preston. Oh, I didn't realize you had property there. Preston cleared his throat. It's a recent acquisition, through one of my investment vehicles. Actually, it's not far from the property you were looking at. What a coincidence, Maxwell commented, watching the silent communication passing between his wife and her lover. The dinner proceeded with Preston delivering a well-rehearsed pitch about his new investment firm, Apex Capital Partners. He emphasized exclusive access to pre-IPO companies, private equity opportunities, and high-yield bonds unavailable to typical investors. The projected returns were impressive and highly improbable. 20% annual returns with minimal risk. Maxwell questioned, deliberately playing the skeptical but intrigued potential investor. That's substantially better than market average. It's about access, Preston explained. My connections in the industry allow me entry points that others simply don't have. And what safeguards are in place for investors? Regulatory oversight? Third-party auditing? A flash of annoyance crossed Preston's face before he masked it with a confident smile. We'll be fully SEC compliant, of course. But one advantage of our boutique structure is flexibility. Less red tape means more agility in the marketplace. Fascinating. Maxwell sipped his scotch. I'd like to see the complete prospectus, along with your personal investment track record for the past 5 years. For due diligence. Preston hesitated. Some of that information is proprietary, but I can certainly provide an overview. Preston has an impeccable reputation, Vanessa interrupted, placing her hand on Maxwell's arm. Everyone in the industry knows his results speak for themselves. Nevertheless, Maxwell said, gently removing her hand, I'd like to see the numbers before committing our savings. The rest of the dinner passed in a dance of politeness layered over tension. Preston continued his sales pitch while avoiding specific questions. Vanessa alternated between enthusiastic support of Preston's venture and anxious glances at Maxwell. And Maxwell played his role perfectly. Interested but cautious, asking just enough questions to appear engaged without revealing his knowledge of their affair or their plans. As they waited for the valet to bring their cars, Preston pulled Maxwell aside. I understand your hesitation, he said in a low voice. But this opportunity won't be available for long. I have several other investors ready to commit. I'm sure you do, Maxwell replied. But I never rush financial decisions, especially when they involve my family's future. Preston's smile tightened. Of course. Family first. Always. The implied threat was clear. Choose wisely, or your family's future might not include you. Maxwell simply nodded, a pleasant smile masking the cold calculation behind his eyes. "I'll be in touch, Preston." Very soon. 3 days later, Maxwell's plan shifted into high gear. The first domino fell when Ryan confirmed that Vanessa, Preston, and even Zoe had indeed visited the Whidbey Island property together the previous weekend, while Maxwell was supposedly at a business conference in Portland. The second domino was Audrey Whitman's discovery that she wasn't Preston's only previous victim. Through her social connections, she'd identified 3 other women with similar stories. All successful professionals who divorced their husbands at Preston's urging, invested in his exclusive opportunities, and been discarded once their funds were depleted. The third and most critical domino was Margot Winter's analysis of the flash drive data, which revealed that Preston had been systematically misrepresenting investment returns and siphoning client funds for years. The evidence was circumstantial but compelling, enough for the SEC to take interest. Maxwell assembled his allies at a private room in an unassuming restaurant in Bellevue, away from their usual haunts. Ryan, Audrey, and Margot sat around the table, each with a folder containing their part of the plan. "First, I want to thank you all for your help," Maxwell began. "What we're about to do will have significant consequences for everyone involved, including potentially ourselves. If anyone wants to back out, now's the time." No one moved. "Good." Maxwell opened his laptop. "Here's where we stand. Preston is planning to launch Apex Capital Partners in 2 weeks. He's recruited 15 investors so far, including my wife, who has been attempting to access our joint savings without my knowledge." "Has she succeeded?" Margot asked. "No. I've secured our assets, though she doesn't know that yet. She believes the transfer is being processed." Ryan flipped through his surveillance photos. "Based on their conversations I've recorded, Preston plans to use the initial investments to create the illusion of high returns, attracting a second wave of investors. Classic Ponzi structure." "And the Whidbey Island property?" Audrey asked. "Purchased through an LLC as their future home," Maxwell confirmed. "They've been there 3 times in the past month, including once with my daughter." Margot tapped her folder. "The SEC is interested in the evidence I provided anonymously, but they move slowly. If we want to stop Preston before he launches Apex and takes everyone's money, we need to accelerate things." Maxwell nodded. "That's why we're moving to Phase 2 tonight. Ryan has planted recording devices in Preston's penthouse. Audrey has arranged for one of Preston's previous victims to contact him, claiming she wants to invest in Apex. And Margot has scheduled a meeting with her former colleagues to share concerns about Preston's new venture." "What about you?" Ryan asked. "What's your next move with Vanessa?" Maxwell's expression hardened. "Tonight, I confront her. Not about the affair, not yet, but about attempting to access our savings without my knowledge. It's time to let her know that I'm not as oblivious as she thinks." The group spent the next hour refining details, synchronizing timelines, and preparing contingencies. As they were wrapping up, Audrey pulled Maxwell aside. "Are you sure you want to go through with this?" she asked quietly. "It's not too late to simply divorce Vanessa and move on." Maxwell studied her face, seeing genuine concern there. "This stopped being about just Vanessa a long time ago. They tried to destroy my career, turn my daughter against me, and steal my savings. Actions have consequences. And what about Zoe? Have you considered how this will affect her?" A shadow crossed Maxwell's face. "Every day, but she's already chosen her side. And sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is show them the truth, even when it hurts." Audrey nodded, unconvinced but understanding. "Just be careful. Revenge can consume you if you let it." "This isn't revenge," Maxwell replied. "It's justice." That night, Maxwell returned home to find Vanessa pacing the kitchen, her face tight with worry. She froze when she saw him. "The bank called," she said without preamble. "They said there's a hold on our joint accounts. Something about unusual activity and needing dual authorization for large transfers." Maxwell set down his briefcase calmly. "Yes, I implemented that security measure recently. Given the amount of money involved, I thought it prudent. But I needed to transfer funds today," Vanessa said, a note of panic in her voice. "For a client's earnest money deposit." "Really?" "Because when I spoke to the bank, They said you were attempting to transfer $500,000 to an account belonging to Apex Capital Partners. Maxwell watched her face carefully. Preston's new investment firm. Vanessa paled. I was going to tell you about that. After I confirmed our spot. These investment opportunities fill up quickly, and I didn't want to miss out. So you decided to move $500,000 without discussing it with me? After our dinner where I specifically said I wanted to review the prospectus before making any decisions. You were being overly cautious, Vanessa countered, her shock giving way to defensiveness. Preston has an incredible track record. This could set us up for early retirement, that beachfront property we talked about. On Whidbey Island, Maxwell interrupted. Like the one Preston already owns through Horizon Ventures, LLC. Vanessa's mouth opened, then closed. How did you know about that? I know a lot of things, Vanessa. About Preston's business practices. About your Sunday afternoons at his penthouse while I'm with Zoe. About the plans you've been making that don't include me. The color drained from Vanessa's face. Max, I can explain. Save it. Maxwell's voice was ice. I'm not interested in explanations or excuses. What I want is for you to answer one question. How long have you been planning to leave me for Preston? Vanessa's shoulders slumped in defeat. Since the college reunion. We didn't mean for it to happen. We just reconnected. And Zoe was turning my daughter against me, part of the plan from the beginning. We never. Vanessa stopped, unable to complete the lie. We wanted her to understand that families change. That sometimes parents are happier apart. How considerate of you. Maxwell's tone was flat. And the Helix job in Denver? Was it your idea or Preston's? He said it was the perfect opportunity. You be focused on your new position away from Seattle while She trailed off. While you established your new life together here. Maxwell finished for her. With my money and my daughter. Vanessa looked up, tears in her eyes. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. You weren't supposed to find out until we were ready. Until you drained our accounts and positioned Preston as Zoe's new father figure, Maxwell corrected. Well, I have news for you, Vanessa. Your plan has failed. The accounts are secured. And Preston Holbrook's house of cards is about to come crashing down. What are you talking about? Vanessa's voice rose. What have you done? Maxwell smiled, a cold expression that didn't reach his eyes. Nothing yet, but in exactly 1 week, Preston's career will be over, his assets frozen, and his freedom in jeopardy. The SEC doesn't look kindly on investment fraud. You're bluffing, Vanessa said, but uncertainty crept into her voice. Am I? I guess we'll find out. Maxwell turned toward the stairs. Oh, and don't bother trying to warn him. My sources at the SEC are already monitoring his communications. As he headed upstairs, Vanessa called after him. What about us? What about our marriage? Maxwell paused on the landing. That's entirely up to you now, Vanessa. You can either distance yourself from Preston immediately, or you can go down with him. Your choice. In the guest bedroom that had become his sanctuary, Maxwell sent a text message to Ryan. First confrontation complete. She'll contact Preston immediately. Record everything. The reply came seconds later. Already on it. Surveillance in place. She's calling him now. Maxwell smiled grimly as he prepared for bed. The counterattack was underway. Now was time to watch the dominoes fall. Chapter 7. Collapse. The week following Maxwell's confrontation with Vanessa unfolded exactly as he'd planned. Panic had set in among his targets, accelerating the very behaviors that would lead to their downfall. Vanessa had immediately warned Preston about Maxwell's threats. Their late-night phone call, recorded by Ryan's surveillance equipment, revealed the depth of their deception and provided additional evidence of Preston's fraudulent business practices. He knows everything, Vanessa had sobbed into the phone. About us, about Whidbey Island, about Apex. He said the SEC is involved. Did he mention specific allegations? Preston had asked, his voice tight with controlled fear. Investment fraud. He said your assets would be frozen within a week. That's impossible. He's bluffing. Even if he had evidence, the SEC moves at a glacial pace. What if he's not bluffing? What if he really does have connections at the SEC? Preston's response had been revealing. Then we accelerate our timeline. I'll move the existing client funds offshore tomorrow. We'll push forward with Apex's launch, collect the initial investments, and be out of the country before the SEC can act. Those recorded words were now in the hands of the SEC Enforcement Division, along with the comprehensive evidence package Maxwell and his allies had compiled. The investigation that might have taken months had become an urgent priority. On Monday morning, 5 days after Maxwell's confrontation with Vanessa, the first public blow landed. The Seattle Times business section ran a small but pointed article questioning the legitimacy of Apex Capital Partners, citing anonymous industry sources concerned about unrealistic promised returns and the principal's history of regulatory warnings. Preston called an emergency meeting with his prospective investors that evening, assuring them that the article was merely a smear campaign by jealous competitors. Vanessa stood by his side, vouching for his integrity and reaffirming her own commitment to invest. What they didn't know was that Audrey Whitman had planted a loyal ally among the investors, another of Preston's former victims who is now working with Maxwell's team. She recorded the entire meeting, capturing Preston's increasingly desperate assurances and outright misrepresentations. On Tuesday, the second blow fell. 3 of Preston's former colleagues at his investment firm, carefully cultivated by Margot Winters, came forward with concerns about his past handling of client accounts. They didn't make public accusations, but their carefully worded statements to industry contacts created a ripple of doubt throughout Seattle's financial community. By Wednesday, 4 of Preston's 15 prospective investors had pulled out of Apex. Vanessa reported this to Maxwell during one of their increasingly tense dinners, attempting to gauge his reaction. "It's strange," she said, pushing food around her plate. Suddenly, everyone's questioning Preston's credentials, almost as if someone is orchestrating a campaign against him. Maxwell sipped his wine. The investment world is built on confidence. Once that's shaken, it's hard to restore. "You wouldn't know anything about this, would you?" Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "I told you what would happen," Maxwell replied evenly. "Whether you believe me or not is your choice." Zoe, who had been quiet throughout dinner, looked up sharply. "What are you guys talking about?" "Nothing, honey," Vanessa said quickly. "Just some business issues Preston is dealing with." "Preston?" Zoe repeated. "You mean the guy you're leaving Dad for?" The question hung in the air like a thunderclap. Vanessa's fork clattered onto her plate. "Zoe, that's not. I don't know what you've heard, but—" "Save it, Mom." Zoe pushed back from the table. "I'm not stupid. I've seen the way you look at him. I've heard your phone calls when you think I'm not listening." Maxwell studied his daughter, surprised by this development. "How long have you known?" Zoe turned to him, tears in her eyes. "Months. You both think I don't pay attention, but I do. I hear things. I see things. Then why did you go along with it?" Maxwell asked quietly. "The visits to Whidbey Island, the family planning dinners?" "Because I thought maybe Preston could make Mom happy again," Zoe said, her voice breaking. "And if Mom was happy, maybe our family wouldn't feel so broken all the time." Vanessa reached for Zoe's hand. "Sweetheart, I'm so sorry. I never meant for you to be caught in the middle of this." Zoe pulled her hand away. "But I am in the middle. And now Dad knows, and everything's falling apart. And it's all just—" She stood abruptly. "I can't do this right now." As she fled upstairs, Maxwell and Vanessa sat in stunned silence. "Are you satisfied?" Vanessa finally asked, her voice bitter. "Now you've turned Zoe against me too." "I didn't turn anyone against you," Maxwell said quietly. "You did that yourself." The next morning, Thursday, the third and most devastating blow landed. The SEC announced a formal investigation into Preston Holbrook's investment activities, citing credible evidence of securities fraud and misappropriation of client funds. His current firm placed him on immediate administrative leave, and financial news outlets ran the story prominently. Preston called Vanessa in a panic. Maxwell, anticipating this, had ensured that Ryan's surveillance covered their conversation. "It's happening," Preston said, his voice tight with fear. "Just like Porter said it would. The SEC showed up this morning. They've frozen my accounts, seized my files. What are we going to do?" Vanessa asked, clearly terrified. "We stick to the contingency plan. The offshore accounts are still secure. We just need to lay low until this blows over." "Blows over?" "Preston, this is the SEC. This doesn't just blow over. Trust me, Preston said, his voice hardening. I've dealt with regulatory issues before. The key is having enough liquid assets to fight back with high-powered attorneys, which is why I need you to secure that investment capital we discussed. Your $500,000. There was a long pause before Vanessa responded. I told you, Max put a hold on our joint accounts. I can't access that kind of money. What about your personal accounts? Your real estate commission fund? That's barely $100,000. And I need that for living expenses if things don't work out with Max. Preston's tone turned cold. So you're backing out. When I need you most. I'm not backing out, Vanessa protested. I just need time to figure out how to get the money without raising suspicions. Time is exactly what we don't have, Preston snapped. The SEC is moving faster than they should be able to. Someone has been feeding them information, detailed information that only an insider would have. You think Max has a source inside your firm? I think your husband is a lot more dangerous than either of us gave him credit for. On Friday morning, Maxwell arrived at his office to find an unexpected visitor waiting. Zoe, who had skipped school to see him. I need to talk to you, she said, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. About Mom and Preston. Maxwell ushered her inside and closed the door. What's going on, Zoe? Preston called last night after you went to bed. He and Mom were arguing about money. He wants her to sell her car, her jewelry, anything to get cash immediately. Zoe twisted her hands in her lap. He said they might need to leave the country. Maxwell kept his expression neutral. Did your mother agree? She was crying. Said she couldn't just abandon everything. He got really angry. Said she had to choose, him or the past. Zoe looked up, her eyes troubled. Dad, is Preston in serious trouble? Yes, Maxwell said simply. He's under investigation for investment fraud, and it's going to get worse before it gets better. And Mom? Is she in trouble too? Maxwell studied his daughter, seeing the fear behind her question. That depends on her choices in the next few days. What does that mean? It means your mother needs to decide where her loyalties lie. With a man who's facing criminal charges, or with her family. Zoe swallowed hard. And if she chooses him? Maxwell reached across the desk and took his daughter's hand. Then we'll face that together. You and me. Zoe nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. I'm sorry, Dad. For everything. For the things I said when I thought you'd lost the Helix job. For going along with Mom's plans. You don't need to apologize, Maxwell said gently. You're 16. You were caught in an impossible situation created by adults who should have known better. Including you? Zoe asked, meeting his eyes. I'm not stupid, Dad. I know you've been planning something. The late nights, the secret phone calls, the way you've been watching Mom and Preston all these weeks. Maxwell considered his response carefully. Let's just say I decided not to be a passive victim in their game. Zoe studied him for a long moment. Good, she finally said. They deserve whatever's coming. That evening, Maxwell returned home to find Vanessa waiting for him, her expression resolute. We need to talk, she said, gesturing toward the living room. About the future. Maxwell set down his briefcase. I'm listening. I've made a decision, Vanessa began, pacing nervously. About Preston, about us, about everything. And I'm not leaving with him. She stopped pacing and faced Maxwell directly. I made a terrible mistake, getting involved with Preston again, letting him influence my decisions, my feelings about our marriage. Maxwell studied her, noting the calculation behind her apparent contrition. What changed your mind? The SEC investigation? The frozen accounts? Or did he ask for money you couldn't provide? Vanessa flinched. You don't have to be cruel. I'm trying to do the right thing here. The right thing would have been not betraying your family in the first place. Maxwell replied coldly. Not trying to sabotage my career, turn our daughter against me, and steal our savings. I know, Vanessa said, her voice breaking. I know what I did was unforgivable. But I'm asking you, begging you, to consider what's best for Zoe. For our family. Our family, Maxwell repeated. The one you were willing to destroy for a fresh start with Preston. That family. Vanessa's composure cracked. What do you want from me, Max? A confession? Fine. I betrayed you. I lied to you. I chose Preston over you because he made me feel alive again after years of feeling invisible in this marriage. Is that what you want to hear? What I want, Maxwell said quietly, is for you to understand exactly what you've done. Not just to me, but to yourself. Because as we speak, Preston Holbrook is making arrangements to flee the country. Alone. Vanessa stared at him. What? No, he wouldn't. He booked a one-way ticket to the Cayman Islands for tomorrow morning. First class. One passenger. Maxwell pulled out his phone and showed her the confirmation email Ryan had intercepted. He's abandoned his penthouse, moved his remaining liquid assets offshore, and made no arrangements for you to join him. That's not possible, Vanessa whispered, sinking onto the couch. He promised we'd face this together, just like he promised Audrey Whitman and Lisa Turner and Michelle Blakemore, all women who left their husbands for him, invested their savings in his opportunities, and were discarded when he was done with them. Vanessa's head snapped up. You've been in contact with his exes? I've been in contact with many people, Vanessa, building a case that will ensure Preston Holbrook spends the next decade in federal prison. Maxwell sat across from her. The SEC raid was just the beginning. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit is taking over the investigation now, and they have evidence not just of securities fraud, but of money laundering and tax evasion. How do you know all this? Vanessa asked, her voice barely audible. Because I orchestrated it, Maxwell replied simply. Every step, every leak, every witness coming forward. All part of a plan set in motion the day Diane Forrester called to tell me my wife had declined a job offer on my behalf and recommended her ex-boyfriend instead. Vanessa's face crumpled. What happens now? Now you make a choice, Maxwell said, rising to his feet. Stay here and face the consequences of your actions, or run after Preston and hope he hasn't already forgotten you. Either way, I've instructed my attorney to file for divorce on Monday morning. And Zoe stays with me. She's old enough to have a say in custody arrangements, and she's already made her choice clear. As if on cue, Zoe appeared at the top of the stairs. I heard everything, she said, her voice steady. And Dad's right. I'm staying with him. Vanessa looked from Maxwell to her daughter, the full weight of her actions finally crashing down on her. I never meant for it to end like this. Yes, you did, Maxwell replied. You just expected a different outcome. As he turned to head upstairs, leaving Vanessa sobbing on the couch, Maxwell felt no satisfaction, no triumph. Only a cold certainty that justice was finally being served. Chapter 8. Revelations. By Sunday evening, Preston Holbrook was in FBI custody, apprehended at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport as he attempted to board his flight to the Cayman Islands. The arrest made headlines across financial news networks, with details of the investigation painting a damning picture of a career built on deception and fraud. Maxwell watched the news coverage from Ryan Mercer's office, where his team had gathered to witness the culmination of their efforts. Margot Winters raised a glass of champagne and toast. To justice served, she said, her eyes bright with vindication. And to the man who made it happen. Maxwell accepted the praise with a nod, but his thoughts were elsewhere. He'd left Vanessa at home that morning, still reeling from the revelations of the previous days and facing the imminent disintegration of her life as she knew it. Zoe had chosen to spend the day with friends, needing space from both parents as she processed her own feelings about the situation. What's next for you, Maxwell? Audrey asked, studying his distant expression. After the divorce is finalized. Professionally, I have a division to build a helix, he replied. Personally, he shrugged. One day at a time. And Vanessa? Ryan inquired. Any further surveillance needed there? Maxwell shook his head. No, that chapter is closed. The divorce will proceed, and she'll face whatever financial fallout comes from her association with Preston. But she wasn't the primary target. Speaking of financial fallout, Margot interjected, my sources at the SEC say they're expanding the investigation to include all of Preston's associates and accomplices. They'll be interviewing Vanessa this week. Let them, Maxwell said. I've ensured she wasn't directly involved in his fraudulent activities. She may lose social standing and credibility, but she won't face criminal charges. Audrey raised an eyebrow. That's surprisingly merciful, given what she did to you. It's not mercy, Maxwell clarified. It's pragmatism. She's still Zoe's mother, and Zoe has been through enough without having to visit a parent in prison. The gathering broke up shortly after, each of Maxwell's allies returning to their lives, changed in various ways by their involvement in Preston's downfall. Ryan had secured new high-profile clients impressed by his discreet intelligence work. Margot had been contacted about a compliance officer position at a prestigious financial firm, her vindication making her expertise suddenly valuable again. And Audrey had begun dating one of the attorneys involved in building the case against Preston, finding unexpected connection and shared purpose. Maxwell drove home through the rain-slicked streets of Seattle, contemplating the swift dismantling of the life he'd known just months ago. The house he was returning to would soon be sold as part of the divorce settlement. His daughter was struggling to rebuild trust in both parents. His professional success at Helix was shadowed by the personal turmoil that had driven it. Vanessa's car was gone when he arrived home, a note on the kitchen counter explaining that she was staying with her sister for a few days to clear her head. The house felt empty, hollowed out by betrayal and revenge. Maxwell poured himself a scotch and settled in his home office, surrounded by the evidence of his meticulously executed plan. A soft knock on the office door startled him. Zoe stood in the doorway, her expression unreadable. "I thought you were staying at Brianna's tonight," Maxwell said, setting down his glass. "I was," Zoe replied, entering the room. "But I wanted to talk to you. Alone. About what happens now." She perched on the edge of the desk. "Mom called me. She's a mess. Keeps saying she made a terrible mistake, that she's lost everything." Maxwell nodded. "That's probably an accurate assessment. She wants me to convince you to give her another chance." Zoe studied her father's face. "She thinks you arranged all this, Preston's arrest, the SEC investigation, everything, to punish her for betraying you. And what do you think?" Zoe was quiet for a moment. "I think you did what you had to do. Preston was dangerous. He manipulated Mom, tried to steal your money, your job. He even tried to take me away from you." "That doesn't answer my question," Maxwell pressed gently. "I think part of you did want revenge," Zoe finally said. "And I don't blame you for that. But I also think you protected me, us, from someone who would have hurt us even worse in the long run." Maxwell reached out and squeezed his daughter's hand. "I never wanted you caught in the middle of this, Zoe. I know, but I was always going to be in the middle. That's where kids end up when their parents' marriage falls apart." She sighed. "Are you really going through with the divorce?" "Yes. Even if Mom begs for forgiveness? Even if she proves Preston was manipulating her too?" Maxwell considered his answer carefully. "There are some betrayals you can't come back from, Zoe. This is one of them. Your mother and I might eventually find a way to co-parent effectively, but our marriage is over." Zoe nodded, accepting this truth more easily than Maxwell had expected. "What about the house? Where will we live?" "I've been looking at condos downtown near my office. More manageable than this place and closer to your school." He hesitated. "But if you'd prefer something else." "No, that sounds good." Zoe offered a small smile. "A fresh start, right?" "Right." After Zoe went to bed, Maxwell sat alone with his thoughts, reviewing the events that had led to this moment. The revenge he'd orchestrated had been complete and devastating. Preston Holbrook faced years in prison. Vanessa had lost not only her lover, but her reputation in the social circles she valued so highly. The life they planned together had disintegrated in a matter of days. Yet Maxwell felt no triumph, no sense of victory. Only a hollow certainty that he'd done what was necessary to protect himself and his daughter from people who had been willing to destroy them without remorse. His phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. "We need to talk. Not about us. About Zoe." Maxwell typed back, "Tomorrow. My office. 2 p.m. The response came quickly. "I'll be there." Setting his phone aside, Maxwell closed the file on Preston Holbrook for the last time. That chapter was finished. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new negotiations, a new life to construct from the ruins of the old one. And he would face it all with the same calculated determination that had guided his revenge. No longer the passive man who could be manipulated and discarded. No longer willing to forgive those who had betrayed his trust. A man transformed by betrayal into something harder, colder, and ultimately more powerful. The rain intensified outside, drumming against the windows like applause for a performance well executed. Maxwell raised his glass in silent acknowledgement of the man he had become, a man who would never again be anyone's victim. Chapter 9. Aftermath. 6 months after Preston Holbrook's arrest, the landscape of Maxwell Porter's life was almost unrecognizable. The divorce had been finalized with surprising efficiency, thanks in part to Vanessa's diminished will to fight after the public humiliation of her association with Preston and the loss of her daughter's trust. Maxwell and Zoe had settled into a sleek downtown condo with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. The Sustainable Urban Engineering Division at Helix Dynamics had grown under Maxwell's leadership, securing contracts across the Pacific Northwest and expanding into California. His professional reputation had soared, untouched by the personal drama that had driven his ambition. On a crisp autumn morning, Maxwell sat in a conference room at Helix, reviewing quarterly projections with his team when his assistant interrupted with an urgent message. "Mr. Porter, there's a call for you from Stillwater Federal Correctional Institution. From Preston Holbrook." The room fell silent. Everyone at Helix knew the broad outlines of the story, how their new division head had been instrumental in exposing a major investment fraud case. What they didn't know were the personal entanglements beneath the professional facade. "I'll take it in my office," Maxwell said calmly, excusing himself. Alone behind his closed door, Maxwell picked up the phone. "This is Porter." "Maxwell." Preston's voice had lost its smooth confidence, replaced by a strained formality. "Thank you for accepting my call. What do you want, Holbrook?" "To propose a deal." Preston paused. "I have information that might interest you." "About Vanessa." Maxwell's grip tightened on the receiver. "I doubt there's anything about my ex-wife that would interest me at this point. What about the fact that she's been visiting me in prison? That she still believes we have a future together once I'm released?" A cold smile crossed Maxwell's face. "Is that supposed to surprise me? Vanessa made her choice months ago. Her continued poor judgment is no longer my concern. What if I told you she's been selling off assets that should have been included in your divorce settlement? Assets she's hidden from the court." This caught Maxwell's attention. Not for the financial implications. He had more than enough, but for what it revealed about Vanessa's continued deception. "Go on." "She liquidated an investment account in her mother's name last month. Nearly $250,000 that should have been declared in the divorce proceedings." Preston's voice took on a cunning edge. "She's planning to use it to fund my appeal. And you're telling me this why? Having second thoughts about her loyalty?" Preston laughed bitterly. "Let's just say prison provides clarity. Vanessa's usefulness to me is limited now, and my sentence might be reduced if I cooperate with ongoing investigations, including providing evidence of Vanessa's financial fraud." Maxwell concluded. "Exactly. But I'd rather make a private arrangement with you first. Information in exchange for your support with the prosecutor's office." Maxwell leaned back in his chair, contemplating the offer. "What kind of support?" "A statement acknowledging that I was forthcoming about additional financial improprieties, that I've shown remorse and a willingness to make amends." "You want me to lie for you?" "I want a reduced sentence," Preston corrected. "And you want to ensure Vanessa faces consequences for trying to cheat you in the court. Seems like our interests align for once." Maxwell considered the proposal. He had no interest in helping Preston reduce his 8-year sentence for securities fraud. But the information about Vanessa's hidden assets could be valuable leverage in the ongoing negotiations about Zoe's college fund. "Here's my counteroffer," Maxwell said finally. "You provide me with documented proof of Vanessa's hidden assets, account numbers, transaction records, everything. In exchange, I won't actively oppose any legitimate cooperation agreement you reach with prosecutors." "That's it." Preston sounded disappointed. "No support letter? No testimony on my behalf? Take it or leave it, Holbrook. I have no incentive to help you beyond staying neutral." After a moment's hesitation, Preston agreed. "Fine. I'll have my attorney send the documentation to yours. But remember, I held up my end. Unlike every other promise you've ever made," Maxwell observed dryly. "Goodbye, Preston." Later that day, Maxwell met Zoe for lunch at a cafe near her school. At 17, she'd grown more serious over the past months, the family upheaval having accelerated her maturity. She'd thrown herself into her studies, particularly the computer science courses Maxwell had encouraged, and was now applying to engineering programs at top universities. "How was your calculus test?" Maxwell asked as they settled at a corner table. "Aced it," Zoe replied with a small smile. "Mr. Brennan said my proof was the most elegant in the class." "That's my girl." Maxwell regarded his daughter with quiet pride. Despite everything, she'd found her footing. "Have you decided which schools you're applying to early decision?" "Stanford and MIT. Like we discussed." Zoe toyed with her napkin. "Mom wants me to consider NYU too. She says New York would be transformative for me." Maxwell kept his expression neutral. "And what do you think?" "I think she wants me on the opposite coast from you," Zoe said bluntly. "She's still bitter about everything. Your college choice should be based on what's best for your future, not either of your parents' preferences." Zoe nodded. "I know." She hesitated before adding, "Mom's been acting weird lately. Secretive phone calls, meetings with her attorney. She mentioned something about financial restructuring yesterday." Maxwell considered whether to share what he'd learned from Preston, ultimately deciding against burdening Zoe with more family drama. "Your mother's finances are her business now, unless they affect your support or college fund." "That's just it," Zoe said, leaning forward. "She made a comment about my college fund needing to be adjusted because of unexpected legal expenses." "Do you think that means?" "It means nothing," Maxwell interrupted firmly. "Your college fund is secure. I made sure of it." The conviction in his voice seemed to reassure Zoe. They moved on to lighter topics, her upcoming robotics competition, his new project designing sustainable infrastructure for a coastal community, the hiking trip they were planning for spring break. As Maxwell watched his daughter talk animatedly about her future plans, he felt a rare moment of peace. The cost of his revenge had been high. A marriage destroyed, family relationships fractured, a coldness within himself that hadn't existed before. But Zoe was thriving, finding her path despite the upheaval. And he had emerged stronger, more respected professionally, unwilling to be manipulated or taken advantage of again. After lunch, Maxwell returned to his office to find an encrypted email from Preston's attorney had already arrived, containing detailed records of Vanessa's hidden assets. The documentation was comprehensive and damning. Not just the investment account in her mother's name, but 3 other concealed assets, including a vacation property in Palm Springs purchased just weeks before she filed financial disclosure forms in their divorce. Maxwell forwarded the information to his attorney with instructions to use it as leverage in finalizing the remaining financial aspects of the divorce, particularly securing Zoe's college fund beyond Vanessa's reach. He specified that he didn't want criminal charges pursued unless absolutely necessary, not out of mercy, but to avoid further disruption to Zoe's life. Later that evening, his phone rang with a call from an unexpected source, Diane Forrester from Helix Dynamics. "Maxwell," she said when he answered. "I hope I'm not disturbing your evening." "Not at all. What can I do for you, Diane?" "I wanted to give you a heads up before the official announcement tomorrow. The board has approved the expansion of your division into international markets, starting with the Singapore project we discussed last quarter." Maxwell sat up straighter. "That's excellent news." "There's more," Diane continued. "With the expansion comes a promotion. Executive Vice President of Global Sustainable Solutions, reporting directly to the CEO. The position represented a leap several levels up the corporate ladder, far beyond what Maxwell would have thought possible a year ago. "I'm honored and somewhat surprised at the speed of this decision." "Don't be. Your leadership has transformed that division, and the board recognizes exceptional talent." Diane paused. "Though I have to admit, I never imagined this outcome the day I called to tell you about your wife recommending someone else for the Denver position." "Life takes unexpected turns," Maxwell observed. "Indeed it does. The official offer letter will come tomorrow, but I wanted you to hear it from me first." "Congratulations, Maxwell. You've earned this." After hanging up, Maxwell stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of his condo, watching the lights of Seattle sparkle across Elliott Bay. The promotion would mean more responsibility, more travel, more influence within Helix. It was everything he'd once dreamed of professionally. His phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. "We need to talk. Urgently. About financial matters that affect Zoe." Maxwell typed back, "Contact my attorney." All communication goes through him now. Seconds later, another text. "This isn't about the divorce. It's about Preston. He's given you information, hasn't he?" Maxwell didn't respond. Let her worry. Let her wonder exactly what Preston had revealed and how Maxwell planned to use it. The uncertainty would be its own form of punishment. Instead, he called Zoe. "How would you feel about a trip to Singapore next month? The Singapore University of Technology and Design has an excellent engineering program. You might want to tour while we're there." Zoe's excitement was evident in her voice. "Seriously? That would be amazing. Is this for work?" "Yes, but we can extend it into a vacation. Just the two of us." After arranging the details with Zoe, Maxwell poured himself celebratory scotch and returned to the window view. In the reflection of the glass, he barely recognized the man he'd become. Confident, successful, uncompromising. So different from the husband who had arrived home 6 months ago to discover his wife had sabotaged his career opportunity and planned to leave him for her ex-boyfriend. His phone rang again. Vanessa, trying a direct call now that he'd ignored her texts. Maxwell silenced it without answering and added her number to his blocked list. That chapter was closed permanently. Tomorrow would bring the official promotion announcement. Next week, his attorney would use Preston's information to secure the final financial settlement. Next month, he and Zoe would travel to Singapore, beginning a new international phase of his career and her education. The future stretched before him, unencumbered by the betrayals of the past. Maxwell raised his glass in a silent toast to the lesson he'd learned and would never forget. Some debts can only be paid in full, some betrayals never forgiven, and some victories are measured not in what you gain, but in what your enemies lose. As the Seattle skyline twinkled before him, Maxwell Porter embraced the man he had become, a man who would never again be betrayed without exacting a price so complete, so devastating, that those who had crossed him would spend the rest of their lives reckoning with the consequences of their actions. And he regretted nothing. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.